and August 2020 alone, 7 Silicon Valley tech giants added nearly $2.5 trillion to their market values, $400 billion of which was added by Microsoft. Founder Bill Gates also has an interest in vaccines, where he, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, owns stock in the vaccine manufacturing companies Pfizer and Moderna. Both companies have been developing a new generation of vaccines that interacts directly with our DNA. Traditional immunization methods involve injecting a dead or a weakened form of the virus. This triggers the immune system to create antibodies, which helps to protect us in the case of a virus getting into our system. Pfizer's and Moderna's new messenger RNA technology, however, is not a standard immunization vaccine, but rather genetic engineering. Instead of injecting a virus into the patient, their approach is to inject synthetic molecules that transport instructions to the cell on how to create antibodies to fight the virus. Up until November 2020, no messenger RNA vaccine had ever been approved for use on humans. On the 21st of November 2020, The Lancet expressed disappointment that the COVID-19 vaccine trial results were announced via press releases, leaving many scientific uncertainties due to the lack of safety data. The publication also expressed uncertainty on how well the vaccines work in older people or those with underlying conditions, as well as their efficacy in preventing severe disease. In early December 2020, a group of medical doctors from around the world created a video to warn the public about the safety of the vaccine.
Due to the excuse of a global pandemic, the pharma industry has the permission to skip the animal trials. This means that we humans will be the guinea pigs.
This vaccine has been developed too quickly. We have no idea what the long-term effects will be. An experiment on humanity.
There is only limited short-term safety data and no long-term safety data to rule out late-onset negative effects like autoimmune diseases, infertility and cancers.
Please be critical. Do your own research and don't let the media manipulate you.
This is the first time ever this will ever be launched on the human race. There are so many different awful things that can happen to us, and we need to investigate this before we go forward. This is my alarm call to the world.
On the 19th of December 2020, the CDC published this report by the Advisory Committee on Immunisation Practices. Just one day after the UK initiated vaccination with the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, authorities confirmed 2 cases of anaphylaxis, which is a very serious allergic reaction that is rapid in onset and may cause death. On page 6, under the title V-Safe Active Surveillance for COVID-19 Vaccines, 3,150, or 2.8%, of the 112,807 vaccine recipients were unable to perform normal daily activities, unable to work, or required care from a doctor or healthcare professional.
If 60 million people in the UK have the vaccine, we can expect 1.67 million people to be unable to work, unable to perform normal daily activities, and to require care. I don't know how long for. If 6 billion people worldwide have the vaccine, then the number rises to 167 million. And this, remember, is a short-term problem. We don't know what will happen in the medium and long term.
The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And you know, the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose. And so, to get the antibodies, some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data
US
better than I do. But the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
In addition to their interest in vaccines, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation donates money to media organisations such as the BBC, universities that provide media representatives, and in partnership with the World Economic Forum, Event 201, which simulated a coronavirus-induced pandemic 5 months prior to the actual pandemic.
On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York. The goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose.
A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The scenario also highlights the very critical role that global business and public-private partnerships play in preparing for and responding to pandemics.
By the turn of the 20th century, 90% of all US refineries were controlled by John Rockefeller, who went on to monopolize the pharmaceutical industry. He had 6 children who founded Venrock, a venture capital company which made investments in tech companies such as Apple and Intel. In 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation released a document called Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, which described a pandemic scenario with the headline, "A world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership." During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy in exchange for greater safety and stability. This heightened oversight took many forms, such as biometric IDs for all citizens. While there's no evidence to suggest that this 10-year-old document has any relation to the current pandemic, it was accurate in predicting many extreme restrictions that are being imposed on us today. Recently, in December 2020, the Rockefeller Foundation published this report. COVID-19 vaccines have arrived, with enough supply to vaccinate as many as 50 million people by the end of January. But these initial doses will do little in the short term to arrest an epidemic that is raging out of control. By the end of January, the country will likely be able to conduct more than 70 million tests each week, a number that is expected to double to 200 million by April 2021. They advise the US government students should be tested at least once a week, every week. Does advice from a large US organisation have the potential to influence UK government policy?
The Health Secretary this evening announced an emergency targeted testing programme for secondary schools.
We've decided to put in place an immediate plan for testing all secondary school age children in the 7 worst affected boroughs of London, in parts of Essex that border London, and parts of Kent.
The test used to detect positive cases is called PCR, and it only requires very small samples to see if there's any virus present. Now, PCR doesn't tell you if what it detects is infectious. It may pick up on virus fragments from a past infection that isn't currently making you sick. Now, this means there could be false positives, so there's a positive test result, but no active infection.
Let's deal with this test for infection, the PCR. I want to ask you if you think it's reliable enough. Dr. Daniels.
I'm an NHS clinician, and we've got experience with these PCR tests for many, many years. And the reality is we always take the results with a little bit of a pinch of salt. You test 1,000 people, one of whom is positive, but the test will pick up 6 people if it's got a 0.5% false positive rate. That's significant if it's being used to drive policy decisions.
If you're tested repeatedly, the odds become greater and greater that you will get a positive test, and it's a convenience for whoever is playing some macabre game, because I don't think it's an error anymore. But this industrial scale PCR test, they don't release even the basic information about it, like the false positive rate. It's unbelievable that public health people who do know better, I've spoken to some people in it, and they're embarrassed. They're not even being allowed to characterize and publish the information you would need to know to work out how useful the test is. That's not being done. It's full steam ahead.
With the PCR test providing a high rate of false positives, is their intention to boost infection rates in order to justify more lockdowns? In the early 90s, disease-mongering was a strategy coined by pharmaceutical companies for creating a disease and scaring people, then offering a pre-planned drug. If today's most powerful people wanted to accelerate the shift towards the fourth industrial revolution by removing jobs and reinventing capitalism, this problem reaction solution strategy would be effective in achieving it. 1. Create a problem. Release a coronavirus and declare a global pandemic.
The coronavirus outbreak has been declared a pandemic.
2. Create a reaction. Ramp up fear with a propaganda campaign and destroy the economy by forcing businesses to close.
We are collectively telling cafes, pubs, bars and restaurants to close tonight as soon as they reasonably can and not to open tomorrow.
3. Create a solution. Provide the mass unemployed with a universal basic income credited onto the Rockefeller and Microsoft-backed digital IDs that are implanted into our hands.
You can create a digital ID today. It's a natural evolution of the way that we're going to use technology in any event to transact daily life. And this COVID crisis gives an additional reason for doing that.
Coerce us into taking tech-based vaccines and staying at home, and require us to reside within smart cities with totalitarian-like surveillance.
Well, let's see how long it takes you to find me. Right behind me, you can see just over my left shoulder there. Hello, guys. I've been expecting you.
In return for giving us the universal basic income, are these the conditions they will require?
Smart cities will pullulate with sensors, all joined together by the Internet of Things, and the urban environment is as antiseptic as a Zurich pharmacy. But this technology could also be used to keep every citizen under round-the-clock surveillance. A future Alexa will pretend to take orders, but this Alexa will be watching you, clucking her tongue and stamping her foot. In future, voice connectivity will be in every room and almost every object. Your mattress will monitor your nightmares, your fridge will beep for more cheese, your front door will sweep wide the moment you approach like some silent butler. Your smart meter will go hustling of its own accord for the cheapest electricity, and every one of them minutely transcribing your every habit in tiny electronic shorthand, stored not in their chips or in their innards, nowhere you can find it, but in some great cloud of data that lowers ever more oppressively over the human race. AI What will it mean? Helpful robots washing and caring for an aging population, or pink-eyed Terminators sent back from the future to cull the human race?